Who is God? We don't know everything, but at least this. What is the difference between the God of pagans and heathens, and the God of Christians and Jews? Let's find out a little more. Here is the difference. This God from pagans is a super being among other beings, a being who acts like other beings, a power stronger than and superior to all other powers, a super cause among other causes. However, the God of Christians is an absolute being, a being who lets other beings act on their own, an infinite power, the source of other powers, a power above and beyond all other causes. This insight is based on Thomas Aquinas, St. Thomas Aquinas, a doctor of the Church. What he says about God. God is the primary cause, he calls it, or first cause. He is the origin and source of everything else. So everything else is connected to him. And all other causes are secondary causes that derive their causal powers from the primary cause. If you want to know more about Thomas Aquinas, I will just touch on him very briefly. I recommend this book, my latest book. It has a foreword by the Jesuit Father Koteski. It goes into all the sciences and what Aquinas has to say about them. You can find it at wheredowecomefrom.com, split by dashes or hyphens. So how do we get from the primary to the secondary causes? All creatures can cause a wide array of changes in the world, but they are only secondary causes. God alone is the universal cause of being. As such, he is the primary cause of all other causes. God, the primary cause, causes creatures to be causes of their own, secondary causes, that is. That's the God of Christianity. God alone is the universal cause of being. As such, he is the primary cause of all other causes. So we depend on the primary cause. Without God, there would not be any secondary causes. Let's say a little more about the difference between the two. Any cause in the chain of secondary causes can only do any causing unless it first exists. Where does its existence come from? From the primary cause. Therefore, the need for causes must come to an end. There must be a cause that is not itself in need of a cause, a primary cause. When Thomas Aquinas describes God as the first cause, what he meant is not merely first in the sense of being before the secondary cause in time, not first in the sense of coming before the second cause in a sequence, but rather first in the sense of being the source of all secondary causes, a power from which all other causes derive their causal powers. Let's explain that very briefly a little more. These are all secondary causes. They cause each other. But all of that is only possible inside the framework of the primary cause. The primary cause is the framework in which we live and move and have our being, as St. Paul says. So the primary cause is not the beginning of the chain of secondary causes, but the origin of the chain. Without the primary cause, secondary causes could just not exist. God, the primary cause, is uncaused, not self-caused. He is the origin of the chain, not the beginning. He is a point of suspension for the chain, not another part in the chain. He is transcendent to all secondary causes, not a cause prior to or larger than all other causes. He is the source and ground of all being, not some kind of super being among other beings. He is part of everything in this universe, but without being a physical part of our universe. According to monotheism, there can only be one God. So Christians, Jews and Muslims must be worshipping the same God then. Isn't that true? However, if indeed monotheism maintains that there is only one God, this can mean at least two very different things. Either all religions venerate the same God, or all religions have their own God, but only one of them is God, the real God. Let's go for the first options. All religions venerate the same God. Their claim is, if there is only one God, then we all worship the same God in monotheism. If so, Yahweh and Allah, for instance, must refer to the same God in heaven, although their descriptions of God are rather different. There are similar cases. Take the morning star, the evening star, and Venus. They come with different descriptions, yet they refer to the same thing in the sky. The second option is something that can be found all over the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. In this view, Yahweh and Allah not only carry different descriptions of God, but also refer to different gods. To use the example of Venus again, Venus may refer for some to a planet, for some to a Greek goddess, for others to a horoscope. So what we have here, different descriptions, but also different references. So what would that mean for Yahweh and Allah? The difference between them is more like the difference between Yahweh and Baal, or between Venus the planet and Venus the goddess. Baal is a god, but not the God. The Old Testaments make very often a distinction between God on the one hand and gods, idols and demons on the other hand. Only Yahweh is God, but all the other gods are not God, but God's creations, which rebelled against him and became fallen spirits. So, if you want to know what the common ground is of the God of Muhammad and the God of Jesus Christ, you might think they are referring to the same God, but it could very well be that they don't. Even the Quran itself suggests that the God of the Quran is radically different from the God Christians worship, and so would Christians claim. Who then is the God of Catholics? The God of Catholics, of Christianity, is the maker of heaven and earth, the primary cause, the Father of Jesus, who became man. A triune God, Father, Son and Holy Spirit. The Father is not the Son is not the Spirit is not the Father, yet the Father is God, the Son is God, the Spirit is God. The Son was crucified under Pontius Pilate, but rose again on the third day. He will come again to judge the living and the dead. His kingdom will have no end. Who is the God of Catholics? This is the God of Catholics, and that is not the God of Islam. So what is our conclusion? We do coexist, Jews, Christians and Muslims. So the dialogue between them must be honest about the differences that separate them, sparing us a false impression of common ground, for God is also in the details. Pope Benedict's encyclical Charity in Truth articulates very well that the aim of any religious dialogue is ultimately truth. All dialogue should come to the truth, but with respect and love. Respect for other religions does not mean we have to let go of any truth claims. We don't have to go along to get along. Pope Benedict also was right when he expressed a deep respect for Muslims, but that is not the same as having a deep respect for Islam. Again, you will find more on Aquinas, who gave us some basic insights on who God is, how we understand God, what God refers to in this book. Though it deals specifically with the different sciences, Aquinas gives us some clarity in all these discussions. His clarity is very clear. You can find it at wheredowecomefrom.com.